just talk to me. Don't worry about
No, I won't.
cameras.
Okay, okay.
Sorry about the delay.
No problem.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to start off by asking you a little bit about your early years growing up here. Tell me about the people who influenced you on the way up as a young person.
Well, I grew up in the south side of Chicago, Jack, and obviously my greatest influence came at home. So I was the oldest of 6 children, so my parents had a great impact on me, and I think probably got me started on a certain path, and I'm grateful, eternally grateful to them for that leadership. And of course, beyond that, there are a lot of influences along the way. Classmates, friends, neighbors, teachers in school. I was reflecting the other night about the most impressive teacher I had at each level of my education, and it was kind of interesting to look back upon that. And then this company that I joined just as a salesman, the founder of the company was a man who took a great interest in me and had a great impact on me and many of the things that I did in life. So it's a whole mixture of people, beginning with family.
You were originally trained as a lawyer.
I went to law school. I had finished undergraduate school, and I decided I wanted to do something more. Went to law school, went to night school. So I was working while I went to school. Going to night school was a very important thing for me. It helped you to develop a sense of discipline because you were compact. You had to make the best use of every day and every night. So I went to night school. I wasn't sure I was going to practice law. It was a time when young lawyers were not making much money, and I was newly married. We had one child, and the second was on the way. And I decided I had to earn a living, maybe even beyond what a young lawyer was doing in those days. So I joined this company that I'm involved with today as a salesman, and was able to parlay my activities here together with my educational background, and here we are.
You did very well with it. You purchased the company in 1967?
I had an opportunity prior to that. I was made president in 1964 and had an arrangement with the founder of the company, and I and a group of associates, all of whom were involved with the company and all of whom have since retired, purchased the company from the founder in 1967.
How would you describe Schwartz Paper?
Well, it's a diverse company, and probably the name Schwartz Paper doesn't do it justice. When I joined the company, its principal business was paper distribution and supplies. Since that time, and we're still engaged in that business, but since that time we're in the printing business. We have 5 printing plants around the country. We have a decorated paper segment called Exeter, who are in very specialty types of paper. We're in the point of sale business. We have a segment of our company called Schwartz Worldwide, where we are a point of sale agency for major advertisers. We've expanded in each segment of the business, and while the name paper has some meaning historically, it is not exactly the entire business that we're in today.
How has the business changed over the time that you've been involved with it?
Well, it's changed in so many ways. Of course, we hear today about all the consolidation issues of companies, the nature of the companies. And interesting, I suspect if we went back into the 50s and 60s, that of our top 10 customers, then I would just guess, Jack, that 5 of them are gone, for whatever reason, mergers, consolidation, and what have you. So we've seen a change in the face of the people we serve. We're also today, our customers depend upon us a lot. They don't want to have big inventories of their own. They want us to provide that. This just-in-time service is very important in the basic business that we're in. One thing that's never changed, I think, is the importance of people and good people. All technology notwithstanding and all the other advances we've had in business, people make things hum, and we're very fortunate we have a lot of very good people.
How many people are employed by the company?
We have, throughout this country, and we have an operation in the United Kingdom, we have about 1,100 people.
Let's talk a bit about your management philosophy. How would you describe that?
Well, I think we need to be open, be flexible. I remember when I joined the company, I asked the founder of the company, is there one single commentary he could make about success or how you do the things you need to do? And he said, you always ought to be easy to buy from. So we've always thought that'd be a philosophy here, that we try to accommodate our people. And of course, obviously our customers, but it's important that our people feel good and feel part of a team. And so we try to develop teamwork here and then let the customers observe that, and I think that enhances our relationship with our customers. But it's important to attract good people, empower them. You know, to have good people and have them locked in, I think is while there is a need for having certain rules and certain discipline, we should empower. We do empower people to make decisions and then stand behind them.
You obviously put a lot of stock in community involvement. I'm going to ask about your civic involvement and the like here. How does that translate, though, into the way that employees or the company is a part of the community in which it resides?
Well, I think companies need to be socially responsible, and I hope that we're that. And we have been very deeply involved in a series of community endeavors. And I think our people within the company like that. A lot of them are involved in doing community work in one sort or another. And I think they like to be associated with a company that has the same sense of responsibility. It's been a great opportunity for us. I mean, it keeps us in contact with people. It keeps us, the company is I think, recognized for that, and we're very appreciative of that. And yet we do that because we think it's important that we do that, important not just for ourselves, but perhaps even more important for the entire community. I think corporations do have a soul, S-O-U-L, soul, and I think it's important that we extend that.
Why is it so important for a community or for a corporation to have that kind of public involvement?
Well, you know, obviously a lot of the important agencies that are vital to a community have always had government support. Today there just isn't enough government support for most of those agencies, and they have to appeal to the private sector. And I think we in the private sector need to step up to these things. I think we have to help provide leadership. I think also that it depends on how you keep score among yourselves. But I think our company and this goes back to the beginnings of the company, I've always felt that to be an important part of the community, you have to be a player. Or to put it differently, not to be a spectator, but be a participant.
You're involved in a lot of different activities. I'd like to ask about, first of all, some of the civic activities here in Chicago. Chairman of the Economic Club, member of the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club. What sort of public life do you have there, and as you look at the Chicago area and the greater Chicagoland area? Yeah.
Well, we're involved right now in a commitment, a plan called Chicago Metropolis 2020. And at the turn of the century, the 19th to the 20th century, there was a plan developed by the Commercial Club called the Burnham Plan. And the Burnham Plan led to some of the wonderful things about Chicago today, our lakefront, our park system. As we go into the 21st century, there's a lot of issues that we need to deal with, and we think that the private sector has to step up and be important in those areas. You know, for example, transportation. We have today a lot of heavy traffic in the Chicago area, as do other major metropolitan areas. When we have a lot of companies that have located in the suburbs, but many of their people come from the city. So we have, and our traffic jams are not just traffic jams into the city. In many respects, our reverse commute, which is the commute that runs contrary to the way you expect it, is more difficult than the traditional commute. So what we're trying to do is in a civic way, is we brought together a group of business people, civic leaders, government leaders, to deal with this. We've had some funding from some of the foundations. We're in the process of securing some corporate funding right now, and we think we're embarked upon a plan that we hope will be the blueprint for the 21st century.
In an area that has so many people and so many different needs for uses for land use is another area that you're looking at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's important. You know, one of the things is, for example, one of the premises we're trying to extend is when companies move into a community, let's say a suburban community, and Metropolis 2020 covers a six county region. We think they also ought to be looking for affordable housing for the people who work there, and if presuming that's available, or it needs to be available, certainly, that then alleviates some of the transportation issues, and you often hear the idea of sprawl, and there is some sprawl on the one hand. On the other hand, I think with good planning, we can preclude some of those issues.
You're also involved in the educational infrastructure and services in the community?
Yes, yeah, very much so. One of the things that we're involved in is the Archdiocese of Chicago has a program called Big Shoulders, which supports inner city schools. And while it's the Catholic Archdiocese, the fact is that over 50% of the students in those schools are not Catholic. And what it does is it provides an alternative for parents for their children's education. And frankly, the results of this are outstanding. And just this morning's paper, I was reading the increase in test scores from these young people. So we think that, this endeavor is supported by a broad cross-section of citizenry. The foundations, major corporations, all of them have a great appreciation for this kind of education.
What about the other two areas that it's involved with, government and the economic interest in the city?
Well, the economic interest, fortunately, we have a mayor who's very focused on economic development, and we want to do all we can to encourage economic development within the region, and particularly within the city. And so as those opportunities arise, we make sure that we provide the right kind of attention. That's kind of vital to the ongoing development and the sustenance of the entire area.
I'd like to turn to, is there anything I haven't asked about that?
No, I think we've covered a kind of a broad spectrum of Metropolis 2020. We think it's vital for the future of the region. We're trying to be proactive and not reactive. And we've had wonderful support, not just only financial support, but involvement. I mean, we have a wonderful group of people who provide a great mix and are deeply committed.
Well, I'm impressed every time I come to town. Something new is happening.
Yeah.
Right now I'm seeing all the road construction around the southern part of the city.
Well, you know, part of that, incidentally, Jack, is interesting. When Metropolis 2020 was formed, and it got off the ground in November of '98, and that was just after the election when George Ryan became governor. And he came to us, Metropolis 2020, and asked to help him support his Illinois First program. And we did, and of course it passed the legislature, and obviously he signed it. And some of what you see is part of the Illinois First program, in which we, Metropolis 2020, have played some modest role.
Well, I've been covering the legislature for about the last 10 years for the Illinois Lawmakers show that was on Channel 11. I saw the thing pass, and now I'm actually seeing it go to work.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
Yeah, they didn't waste much time in getting it started.
No, they sure didn't. You're also very active with Notre Dame University.
Well, I went to school there as an undergraduate, and I've been privileged to serve on their board for 20 years. And then as chairman of the board for the past 8 years, and vice chair for the 6 years prior to that. So I've had some involvement there.
Oh, just a bit. Yeah. Tremendously influential institution in this area.
Well, I think it has. You know, we've been very fortunate that we've had very strong leadership at the school. We've had great international exposure. Our student base comes from not just around the country but around the world. We've had wonderful benefactions. We have an endowment today that's about $3.5 billion, which has us right in the higher echelon of schools in terms of total endowment. And it's a school that has, for a lot of reasons, a reasonably high profile.
Oh, yes. What are the particular challenges facing a religious institution in today's society? Well,
one of the challenges is that there aren't as many religious as there once were. Now, that's not to suggest in any respect that the education isn't every bit as good, because it is. But to the extent that any institution of religious background depends upon the religious themselves, there are fewer of those. I think some of the traditional issues, you know, within any institution, to make sure it's well managed in every respect, not just financially well managed or property well managed, but the academic segment is well managed. That you get a broad group of students and as diverse as you can possibly have, and to make sure that it all blends together, and that you are committed to your ideals and that you live up to those. As
society changes and as technology changes, We, of course, at our own university have seen a lot of different pressures come to bear to get more courses online, and how's that impacting Notre Dame?
I think it's impacting everyone. I think that that's a very good question, and the facts are that regardless of how we feel, plus or minus about that's where we are, and so everyone cries for more of that, and I think all of the schools have to shape their program, their curriculum around and maybe understand that. But you're right, and I know Southern Illinois has been deeply committed to this, so it's important for all of us in higher education.
As you look to the future, where do you want to see Notre Dame going?
I think I would hope Notre Dame is primarily an undergraduate school. There are a total of 10,000 students, and 7,500 undergraduates, and I think that they would like to grow their graduate program, but I think to never lose sight of the fact that they're primarily an undergraduate school. Student residence life is an important ingredient there. Almost all the students live on campus, and I think that's important. I think one of the things, other than the book items that we have when we're going to school, I think it's also an opportunity to develop relationships. And living in the residence halls, I think, gives our young people a chance to do that. I was commenting, I made a remark at our commencement this year, and I think it fits that you may go to college to learn how to make a living, but maybe more important, learn how to make a life. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do.
As an alum who's so intimately involved in the stewardship of the university, what does Notre Dame mean to you?
Well, it means a place that I have a great deal of affection for, that's been part of my life for a long period of time. That is, I hope it provides both spiritual and practical focus for me and for those people who are there. I'm very grateful for the relationships that I built up when I was there. Also grateful for the opportunity to serve the university as a trustee and then as a vice chair, and then for the last 8 years as chair. So it's been a great opportunity for me to be involved with this, not the university, but people who are connected with it. And it's something which I hope in some very small way that I was helpful in helping them focus on the road that they go down now.
I'd like to turn to some of your other activities.
Sure.
You're a director at Children's Memorial Hospital. That's a fantastic place, doing a lot of good work.
It's a great place. I always tell people who are think they have something tough in life, whatever it might be, I say, I'll tell you what, give me a half an hour someday and let me just walk you through any floor of that hospital, and then you leave and you tell me who has things tough. They do a remarkable job. Their attention to youngsters and the youngsters' special needs is extraordinary, and it's a very fulfilling thing to be part of that hospital.
Yes, indeed. Curious also about the institution we toured yesterday, the Museum of Science and Industry.
Yes, yeah.
You led a major effort there to change the face of the place. I didn't recognize it. It's been about 15 years since I've been there, and it's fantastic.
Well, you know I've been involved there as a trustee for a number of years, and most recently as chairman of that museum as well. You probably observed as you pulled up yesterday that the parking area, that parking garage, which is now, and of course, an underground garage, has freed up the opening face of the museum, and it has a wonderful park-like campus to it. And it's a great institution. Right now, it's doing very well. Of the Chicago museums, it has what rankings are usually determined by numbers of visitors. In that respect, they do rank first. And the thing I find refreshing about it, it's a museum that appeals to people of all ages. And you were there yesterday, Jack, so I'm sure you saw some very younger people as well as some older people there.
I love. I'm a pilot, and I love the airplane music. The airplane stuff is just fantastic.
Yeah.
What sort of a mission does an institution like that have in society today?
I think if you ask the folks, the leadership there, David Messina, our president, Jim Farrell, our now chairman, education gets a very high focus. As a matter of fact, we had a board meeting yesterday, and the discussion was in education. So while it is an education in the traditional formal sense, it's an extension of the education of all of our people, and not just children in school, but adult education as well. And I think that in many respects it fulfills that. And I think that may be the single most important focus.
What sort of impact does it have on the quality of life in a community like this?
Oh, I think it's very important. cultural activities, be they our universities, our arts, and our museums are vitally important. And the Museum of Science and Industry there are three major museums of its sort in the world, and clearly in this country it is the primary institution of that kind, and it has a very profound and important effect on the community.
Same can be said of the lyric opera.
Oh, sure, in a different way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. There are so many different institutions in the city, all of which are thriving right now, and I think that's important. And fortunately, our leadership, and particularly our governmental leadership, and our mayor, Mayor Daley, is really directed in that fashion. So that means that we've got an understanding audience out there, and each of these institutions gets substantial support from the entire community.
I know that you've also been involved in professional sports teams in the
Yes.
community. And,
yeah.
Bears, Cubs, White Sox also?
Yes. Yeah.
What do they bring to a town like Chicago?
I think balance. I think that when a community is balanced, you asked earlier about the museums, and I commented on the cultural aspect of things, and I think obviously the sports teams provide are a form of entertainment, but they can be very cohesive. You know, in Chicago is a very good sports town, and the teams, and they provide support for the teams in a very effective way. There hasn't been as much success from some of the teams over the years as the fans would like, but the fans are still very supportive. So that we have two Major League Baseball teams, an NBA basketball team, NFL football team, a National Hockey League team, and then there are other teams in some of the newly formed leagues. But I think it's you look at a newspaper, you watch television, or what have you. Sports plays an important role, and even in a day and age when we have very highly paid athletes, and they're being nicely rewarded for their skills. But it's an important part of an entire community. I remember 1958 when the then Brooklyn Dodgers went to Los Angeles, and the then New York Giants went to San Francisco, and New York got down to one team, the Yankees, and it was almost like there was a vacuum there. Now here's our largest city. So I think that, and now since that time they've added the Mets and they've added other teams, but I think that professional sports is another important ingredient to the fabric of a city.
Really? And with that in mind, you're also very active in a number of other corporate activities.
Yeah, I think that's I am, and that's something which I get a great deal of satisfaction from. I've served on the boards of a number of companies, including Aon Corporation, who of course are a major insurance company, McDonald's Corporation, who everyone's familiar with McDonald's, Tribune Company, who are, as you know, a multimedia company, both electronic and print media, owning several newspapers. In fact, just this week closed the transaction to acquire the Times Mirror Company, which is involved with Los Angeles Times, as well as, of course, the Chicago Tribune, which is the flagship of the company, and there are many television, radio, and electronic holdings. And those companies and other companies on whose board I serve, Skyline Corporation, who happen to be a major manufacturer of housing, I think helps provide a little balance, and it's a great experience, and it's something I feel very good about.
Well, you're part of the overall commercial culture and the economic fabric of the whole town when you do that.
Well, yeah, it is. And it turns out that we learn after a while that Chicago is a big small town. People think of it as being such a huge place, and yeah, it is big. But on the other hand, you run into a lot of the same people at all kinds of different events. So we think of it as a big small town.
And these kinds of relationships are so important to the overall city.
Yeah, I think so. And and it's unrelated to any background from where people came from or what they have or where they went to school. It's all people pulling in the same direction for the same cause. And that's why I think the city has had some success in recent years, and particularly because that's the kind of leadership that our mayor currently provides.
Looking back Is there any accomplishment or activity that's given you the most satisfaction? There's
Uh,
so many things.
Yeah, well, I suppose maybe my 7 children, my wife, my 7 children, and their 6 of whom are married, their spouses, and 20 grandchildren. I think that's the place to start for satisfaction.
What advice do you give, going back to your civic and philanthropic work? What advice do you give other executives about the returns that gives?
Well, you know, I think it's important in life to be able to sort things out and know what's important and what's not important. But once you've sorted things out, I tell people to have yes in your vocabulary more than you have no. I think that's important. I think to always say yes to opportunities, and but to make sure that you've sorted everything out, because you have to be respectful of the time constraints that you need to place upon yourself and to discipline yourself with. But once you've focused and said, I'm going to be able to devote this much time to my family, this much to my profession or my work, whatever it might be, and this much to community endeavors, and then continue down that road and know how to say yes and not just to say no.
Goes right back to your remarks to the Academy.
Yeah, it was part of it. Yes, but I do believe in that. I mean, those remarks were not casual. I mean, they were committed.
Well, it'll segue nicely into tying the whole piece together for me. Thank you.
Sure. Good.
Let's go ahead and check our tape.